It all began with something as innocent as a snap. Anna had always loved Snapchat, posting fun, silly pictures and chatting with friends. It was a simple way to stay connected, especially during those long stretches of quiet evenings when she found herself alone at home. That night, however, something felt off. She had just gotten into bed, scrolling through her phone, when a new notification popped up. A snap from someone she didn't recognize. The username was odd, a jumble of random letters and numbers, but it wasn't the username that unsettled her. It was the image itself. It was a photo of her house. The angle was from the front yard, near the street, showing the front porch lights casting long shadows across the ground. The picture looked recent, maybe even taken just moments before. Her heart skipped a beat as she stared at it, a cold shiver running through her spine. The snap didn't come with a message, just the image itself. Anna sat there for a moment, feeling the unease grow within her. Who would send a picture of her house like that? She quickly brushed it off, assuming it was a mistake, a random, harmless message from a stranger. It wasn't the first time something like that had happened. But something inside her told her to double-check her privacy settings. Maybe it was just an odd coincidence, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She quickly went into the app and checked her settings, ensuring everything was locked down as tight as possible. Her account was private, so there was no way a stranger could see her posts. She told herself that it must have been some glitch, a mistake made by the app. But still, she couldn't fully shake the feeling that something was off. The snap stayed with her, lingering in the back of her mind. It was late, and she needed sleep, so she tried to dismiss the feeling and set the phone down on her nightstand. But as she closed her eyes, she couldn't stop thinking about it. What if it wasn't just a mistake? What if someone was watching her? The thought was absurd, and she told herself she was overreacting, letting her imagination run wild. Still, she couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling of unease that crept over her. She had lived in the house for a few years, a modest 2-story, with a small yard and a quiet neighborhood. Nothing ever happened here. There was no reason to be afraid. But now, the house felt different, as though something had changed. The snap made it all feel too real. At first, the rest of the night passed without incident. She went to bed and tried to forget about the snap. But the next morning, when she woke up, there was another one. Another snap. This time, the photo was different. It wasn't of her house, but of her own front door, taken from the street. The shot was so precise it almost seemed like someone had been standing right outside her house, watching her. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she realized that whoever had sent it was still close by. She froze, her thumb hovering over the screen, staring at the image. The picture was too specific, too accurate to be a coincidence. Her stomach turned as she wondered how the person had gotten so close without her noticing. She had no recollection of anyone standing near her door, especially not at night. She checked the timestamp on the photo, and a chill washed over her. Less than an hour ago. Her phone had buzzed while she had been in bed, completely unaware that someone had been outside, watching her. The message came with no text, just the photo. Anna could feel the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. What kind of person does this? She sat down at her desk, thinking through the possibilities. She tried to calm herself, telling herself it could be a sick joke, a prank. Maybe someone she knew was just messing with her, but the idea didn't sit right with her. The previous snap from the front yard had felt distant, but now this one was too close. Someone had been outside her house, and that wasn't something she could ignore. She checked her front door and the windows around her house, making sure everything was locked. It was the first time in ages that she had felt this kind of fear, the fear that someone was out there, watching, waiting. She decided to tell her best friend, Rachel. She texted her about the snaps, unsure if it was just a random stranger or something more sinister. Rachel, of course, dismissed it at first, laughing it off as a harmless prank. "It's probably just a random bot," Rachel texted back. "Don't worry about it." Anna wanted to believe her, but something kept her on edge. She couldn't stop thinking about the snaps, about the way they were taken. So specific, so close. That evening, Anna went to bed early, hoping that the day would bring some clarity. She would have to report it to the police if it happened again, she decided. She couldn't ignore it any longer. But when she woke up the next morning, her heart stopped. Another snap. This one was different, though. It wasn't a photo. It was a video. She hesitated before clicking on it, her stomach churning. As the video played, she saw herself. It was a recording of her sitting in her living room, reading a book, completely unaware of the camera. The video was shaky, and at first, Anna thought it was someone she knew playing a prank. But then, as she watched, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The camera wasn't positioned by anyone she recognized. It was positioned in a way that made it seem as if someone had been watching her from the shadows, lurking just out of sight. Anna's heart hammered in her chest as she froze, staring at the screen. She could feel the walls closing in on her as the dread sank deeper into her bones. Whoever had been sending these snaps had been inside her home. That realization sent waves of panic crashing over her. How long had they been watching her? How had they gotten inside? And why? This wasn't just some harmless joke anymore. This was something much darker. She bolted out of bed, heart pounding, and rushed to check every door and window again. Everything was locked, just as it had been the night before. The house was still secure, but the fear that gripped her was different this time. It wasn't just the fear of an unknown intruder. It was the knowledge that someone had been inside. The pictures, the video, everything felt like a sick game. And Anna didn't know how to stop it. She called Rachel again, her voice shaking as she explained what had happened. Rachel, now realizing how serious the situation was, promised to come over to her house as soon as she could. But even as Anna clutched her phone, waiting for Rachel's arrival, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't going to end, with just a few creepy snaps. Whoever this person was, they weren't finished yet. Something much worse was coming. The waiting game had only just begun. Anna stared at the photo on her phone, trying to calm the sudden rush of fear building in her chest. The image hadn't changed. It was still her front porch, still the same worn mat, still the cracked edge of the stone step that no one else would notice unless they'd stood there in person. Her hands felt clammy, and her breath came a little quicker than before. She tried to rationalize the situation, telling herself that maybe it was just a prank. Some stranger might have looked up her location or snapped the photo during the day. But that didn't explain how they'd gotten the angle just right, as if standing there, feet away from her door at that very moment. Her heart thudded louder, and she picked up her phone again, scrolling to find her neighbor's number. Mr. Hayes had lived across the street for years. He was retired, stayed up late, and often looked out for the neighborhood. When Anna texted him, asking if he saw anyone outside her house, his reply came quick and casual. "Nope, all clear from here. Probably just a prank, kiddo. Lock your door just in case." The message did little to ease the tension gripping her. She rose from her bed and walked carefully to the window, gently pulling the curtain aside. The street outside looked peaceful. Just empty pavement, the occasional flicker of a porch light, and Mr. Hayes's dog asleep near his front steps. Still, something didn't feel right. Just as she was about to close the curtain, her phone buzzed again. Another snap. Dread pressed into her chest as she opened it. This one sent her stomach into knots. It was a photo taken inside the house. The image showed the staircase that led from the living room to the second floor, the same one just down. The hall from her bedroom. It was taken from a low angle as if the person had crouched down behind the railing. There was no doubt anymore. Someone was in the house. Panic flooded her. She didn't scream, didn't run. Instead, her instincts kicked in. She backed away from the window, grabbed her bedroom door, and slammed it shut, turning the lock with shaking fingers. Her breathing was heavy now. She looked around her room, eyes darting from corner to corner. She grabbed the old baseball bat that leaned beside her closet, a gift from her brother years ago. Her phone slipped from her hand and landed on the bed. Quickly, she picked it up and dialed 911. The voice on the other end was calm, steady, and asked her to speak slowly. She told them everything: the snaps, the username, the photos of her house, and now the one from inside. The dispatcher told her to stay hidden, to keep quiet, and that police officers were already on the way. Anna backed into the room and slid under the bed, pulling the blanket down with her to block her view from underneath. Her heart was pounding so loudly she thought it would give her away. The seconds dragged like hours. Somewhere in the house there was silence. No creaking floorboards, no sound of footsteps. Nothing. That stillness was worse than any noise. Her phone remained gripped in her hand, the dispatcher still speaking in a soft voice, reassuring her that help was near. Every little sound made her flinch, the creak of the walls settling, the soft gust of wind pressing against the windows, the distant bark of a dog. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a faint click. Her phone buzzed again. Another snap. She didn't want to look, but her curiosity, mixed with fear, forced her to swipe it open. The image made her blood turn to ice. It was her bedroom door, the one she had just locked. The photo was taken from outside, just inches away, showing the doorknob and part of the wooden frame. Whoever was sending the snaps was standing right outside the door. Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't dare make a sound, didn't dare move. She felt a tear roll down the side of her face and onto the floor, but she didn't wipe it away. The dispatcher's voice continued softly in her ear, repeating that help would arrive soon. Outside her door, the silence stretched on. Then, slow, careful footsteps could be heard, moving away down the hall. She stayed still, not even breathing too loud. Minutes passed, long and painful, each one filled with terror. Then came the distant sound of sirens, growing louder, closer, until flashing red and blue lights spilled across her bedroom window. She heard the front door slam open, heavy footsteps entering the house, and then voices, clear, commanding, searching. The dispatcher told her it was safe now, that the police were in the house. She crawled out from under the bed with weak legs and opened her door to the sound of officers calling her name. But as the relief rushed over her, another question remained. How had the intruder gotten inside in the first place? The police arrived in full force, their lights flashing through Anna's windows, cutting through the darkness like a beacon of safety. Sirens screamed in the distance, echoing down the quiet streets. Anna's heart still raced as she stepped out of her room and walked into the hallway. She had locked herself in her bedroom for what felt like hours, but now the sirens brought the promise of protection. The officers were already in the house, calling her name in low, calm voices. Anna opened the door, stepping cautiously into the hallway. She felt her legs tremble beneath her, the rush of adrenaline now starting to wear off, leaving a cold numbness in its place. The officer nearest to her was a tall man with short, graying hair. His eyes softened when he saw her, and he immediately stepped toward her with a reassuring expression. He told her everything would be okay, that they'd search the house thoroughly. The others, meanwhile, were combing every room, opening closets and drawers, checking every corner, every nook. Anna stood there, not sure where to go, not sure whether to be relieved or still afraid. Her eyes darted from officer to officer, each of them moving carefully, methodically, as they cleared the rooms one by one. Her phone, still clenched in her hand, buzzed again. She jumped at the sound, and her breath hitched as she checked the screen. Another snap. This time, It was a picture of the officer standing just outside her bedroom door. The photo was clear, so close that Anna could almost see his uniform number. Whoever was behind the snaps had followed the officers into the house. Someone was still here. Her stomach twisted. She looked up at the officer in front of her, her voice barely a whisper. As she showed him the snap, his expression immediately shifted from reassuring to serious. He motioned for her to stay where she was, then quickly moved to confer with the others. Anna was left standing in the middle of the hallway, her mind spinning, her body frozen in place. The dread that had started as a simple unease now spiraled into full-blown terror. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but something about the calmness of the officers kept her silent. They were professionals. They'd figure it out. The officers kept moving, splitting into groups, searching the house with growing urgency. One officer checked the attic. Another checked the basement. Anna's gaze flickered between the officers as they moved, but she kept her distance. After what felt like an eternity, one of the officers who had been investigating the basement came back upstairs with a grim expression. He approached the lead officer, who had been speaking to Anna. The officer's voice dropped low, but Anna caught every word. "There's something down there. We need backup." Anna's breath caught in her throat. She didn't need to ask what something meant. The officer turned to her, his face hardening as he spoke. "We need you to stay. Up here. Stay with us. Don't move, and don't go near the basement." Anna nodded, her mind racing. What was down there? Was the person who'd been stalking her hiding in the dark corners of her own house, watching her through the shadows? The panic that had subsided when the police arrived surged back up, sharper than before. Minutes dragged by. Every second felt like a year. Then, the door to the basement creaked open, and a few more officers entered, their radios crackling with orders. Anna remained by the stairs, her eyes locked on the door, her body trembling. She heard faint sounds from downstairs, muffled. Voices, footsteps, and then the sound of something heavy shifting. She didn't know how much time had passed, but it felt like an eternity before one of the officers finally emerged from the basement. His face was pale, his expression distant. He didn't speak at first, he just shook his head. The officer, who had been speaking to Anna earlier, stepped forward. "We need to secure the perimeter," he said, his voice tight with urgency. He turned to Anna and explained that the person responsible for the snaps had been hiding in the basement for who knows how long. He hadn't been there for just one night. He had been living there. The basement door, which had been locked for years, had been forced open recently. They found signs of movement, things scattered about, food wrappers, old clothes, and items Anna didn't recognize. The intruder had clearly been living in the house for weeks. Anna's mind reeled at the thought. She felt a wave of nausea, knowing that this person had been so close to her, lurking in the dark corners of her own home. How had she not noticed? How had he managed to stay hidden for so long? The officers confirmed that the person had been using the photos of the house to track her, knowing when she was home, when she was alone. It was terrifying to think that for weeks, someone had been observing her every move from the shadows. They hadn't caught him yet, but they were certain he was still somewhere in the house. The officers continued to search, but Anna couldn't shake the feeling that the man was still there, watching. She kept her distance from the basement, terrified of what they might find next. Hours passed, and it wasn't until dawn that the officers finished their search. The house had been cleared, but the feeling of being violated lingered in the air. They found no trace of the intruder. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, leaving only the fear and the marks of his presence behind. The officers were baffled. They couldn't explain how someone had stayed hidden for so long without detection. But one thing was clear. Whoever had been sending the snaps knew Anna's house as if they had been living there. And now they were gone, leaving behind only the eerie silence of the house. the police couldn't find any leads on the mysterious person behind the Snapchat account. The case remained open, but no answers came. No one ever found the person who had been watching Anna from the shadows. And as much as she tried to move on, every time she picked up her phone, every time she scrolled through Snapchat, a part of her wondered, was he still out there? Still watching? Months passed, and the nightmare Anna had experienced started to fade from her daily life, though it never fully left her. She tried to move forward, returning to her routine of school, friends, and the usual distractions that kept her mind occupied. The police had told her that they were still investigating, but nothing came of it. No new leads, no clues, nothing at all. The house felt empty without the constant fear hanging over her. The memories of the snaps, the photos of her home, the terrifying realization that someone had been watching her for so long, began to feel like a distant memory, a dark chapter she hoped to leave behind. But then, late one evening, she received a notification that made her stomach drop, a Snapchat message. Her thumb hovered over the screen, her pulse racing. She had deleted the app months ago, unable to bear the thought of seeing another snap from that unknown person. But something made her open it. It was a single picture. The image sent her heart into overdrive. It was a picture of the very same spot where she had been standing the night the police arrived, right in front of the stairs, her back to the hallway. The snap was taken from behind her, as if someone had been hiding just out of sight, watching her through the cracks in the door. She hadn't been aware at the time. No one had been in the house that night, at least not according to the police. The officer who had been with her through the investigation had promised her that they'd searched every inch of the house. But now, as she looked at the photo, doubt crept in. Could someone have been hiding again, watching her from a dark corner, even after everything that had happened? A chill ran through her body. She could barely think. Her hand trembled as she held the phone, staring at the picture, her mind racing with terror. She knew she needed to tell someone, but who could she trust? It had been months since the incident. Everyone had moved on. The police had given up, unable to find any new evidence. Anna felt more alone than ever. She sent the snap to the officer who had been in charge of the case, hoping against hope that he could offer an explanation. She waited and waited. The reply never came. The dread in her chest grew heavier. Could it be that the officer had moved on as well, left her to deal with the aftermath of the horror on her own? Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message. She didn't recognize the number, and a sinking feeling settled in her stomach. Hesitantly, she opened it. The message was short, unsettling. "You're still mine." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Her head spun as she read the message again. There was no doubt now. Whoever had been stalking her, whoever had been sending the photos, was still out there. They hadn't gone away. They had been watching her all along, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Panic gripped Anna, her heart thudding loudly in her chest. The air around her felt thick and suffocating. She stood in the middle of her room, trying to process what was happening. Her mind raced with questions. How did they get her number? How had they found her again after all this time? And why? She thought of everything that had happened: the intruder in the basement, the photos sent from inside her house, the fear that had driven her to lock every door, to keep every window closed, to try and protect herself. But now it was clear. There was no protection. There was nowhere to hide. The person who had been following her wasn't just a stranger. They were someone who had studied her, learned her habits, and knew exactly how to get to her. The realization felt suffocating. She couldn't stay in that house anymore. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every shadow, every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of light made her jump. She couldn't even trust her own home anymore. Without thinking, she grabbed her keys, her purse, and bolted out the door. The cool night air hit her like a slap in the face. but it didn't do anything to calm the storm of fear swirling inside. She needed to get away. She drove without any particular destination, not caring where she went, just needing to be anywhere but there. The streets were empty, dark, and quiet, just the way she liked them, until the phone buzzed again. Another snap. This time, the picture was different. It was of her car, taken from the front, as if someone had been waiting at the stoplight, watching her drive by. Her stomach twisted into a knot as she pulled over to the side of the road, nearly hitting the curb in her frantic state. She stared at the photo, the realization sinking in that she hadn't been alone. Not for a second. Someone had been watching her the entire time. They knew where she was, knew where she went. She felt utterly exposed. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as the panic intensified. The silence in the car felt suffocating, almost as if the air itself was pressing against her chest. It was then that she realized she wasn't going to be safe anywhere. Not in her house, not on the road, not even when she tried to escape. She thought back to the basement, to the moments when she had been so close to the truth, yet so far from understanding the full scope of the danger. It wasn't over. It hadn't been over since the first snap. Whoever this person was, they had followed her, waited patiently, and now they were coming for her again. The phone buzzed again. Another message. "I'm closer than you think." The words sent a chill down her spine. She wasn't sure whether to turn back to the safety of her home or drive straight into the unknown. But one thing was clear. She wasn't going to be free of this nightmare. The terror that had been dormant for months was back with a vengeance, and it was following her. The game had just begun.